Good morning, everybody. It is Friday, and it's not just any Friday. It is a Blue Friday, the first official Blue Friday of the 2025 season, as the Seahawks will play the 49ers on Sunday at 1:05 p.m. And there's no pair of people I would rather spend this morning with than my good friends Dave Boling and Mike Sando, two of the best to ever cover the Seahawks, as well as many other things. Dave Boling, accomplished author, as well as covers the Gonzaga Bulldogs as well, if you're a Gonzaga fan. And then Mike Sando, who covers all things NFL for The Athletic. Both men I consider mentors for what I try to do, even though I'm not a young man either. So
compared to us.
Yeah, well,
certainly me.
When I golf with Mike, I realize he uses his height well, man. This is a guy that uses his length well. And if there is an athletic anonymous ranking about golf striking, I think Mike Sando would score pretty well among his.
Yeah, but that's short game.
Yeah, the short game, let's not talk.
The gravitational pull to 90 is real, believe me.
Yes. How you guys doing this morning?
I get so excited this time of year. I'm like a kid. I just really, blood gets going. Just starting in training camp, and then the college season gets going. I don't sleep well at night when there's a game I'm going to cover or watch. Still, the old biorhythms really get cranked up come September.
I had a dream last night, and the only thing I remember from it was that the 49ers beat the Seahawks in week 1. I woke up and I was like, wow, really? And then it wasn't happening. So if maybe the 49ers only win this game in Sando's dreams, it's a weird thing to have in your dream, but Hawk
somebody's
fans
telling you something.
Hawk fans can be relieved that wasn't reality.
Yes. Well, there is news about that game. We'll get to that in a little bit. But there was a game last night. The NFL season has officially kicked off. We're actually get to review a game a little bit. We won't go deep into the Dallas versus Eagles game. But before it even started, literally, the kickoff happens. A guy is carted off with an injury. And while we're watching the injury, Jalen Carter gets ejected before the first snap for spitting on Dak Prescott. So, guys, have you ever seen anything like that? And what a crazy way to start the 2025 season. Dave?
I think Mike had a tweet during the game that said, these guys have got to realize there's 20 cameras out there live. Yeah. And there is nothing that goes unseen. I mean, the things that used to happen, like in a scrum or in a pileup, were just horrific. I mean, it was assault and battery in there, and things that were done and said that nobody ever knew about. And I was trying. Didn't Romanowski spit on somebody?
Yeah, AJ Stokes. Yep.
There was a thing that it's happened before. It's probably happened a lot. It sure is disgusting, but kind of old school here. I kind of okay, that guy's going to get fingers in his eyes the next time he's in a pile up. And it's kind of like hockey enforcers. You'd have somebody go take care of them afterward. But this is a different age, man. Everybody sees everything.
I thought if there's anything that's the league this year has, the league in recent years, hey, let's make the kickoff safer. So the first play, there's an injury on that, right? Let's make it. And then the point of emphasis, videos sent around to every team this year with Troy Vincent talking about sportsmanship and respecting your opponents. And then you have two of the highest profile people on the highest profile teams. Dak Prescott, now we see the video later, did a little spit of his own, kind of from the other side of the, within his huddle and kind of down towards the feet. I'm sure that Jalen Carter took offense to that. It doesn't justify what he did, but then they're talking and Jalen Carter not being a quarterback, right? Being a defensive lineman who's paid to react and get off the ball fast and maybe think second, spits on him. And it was just within about 5 minutes of the start of the game, these major points of emphasis that the league has tried to implement were completely violated.
And wasn't Carter a traffic menace or something too? I mean, he's had
right. He's had there was a tweet that went viral. I think someone saying that Jalen Carter's known for leaving the scene pretty quickly, which is funny and awful. But in any event, I think it was not what the league would have wanted to start their season for sure. And it's a little bit of a shame because the first half of that game was excellent. Like Dak Prescott looked back and looked very good. CeeDee Lamb looked like uncoverable.
Yeah.
And the Eagles looked like the Eagles, moving down the ball and, basically not even having Jalen Hurts need to pass the ball more than 4 yards past the line of scrimmage on most plays, because why would you when you can run the ball the way they ran the ball? And then they had the lightning break, and then it kind of was like hard to watch the rest of the way. CeeDee Lamb ends up dropping a couple passes that I think he would tell you he should have caught and could have changed the outcome of that game. But last thing I'll ask you about is about this game, assuming you watched some of it. Did it change your perspective at all about either team? Because it did for me on both sides, and I'll share why. But Mike, any thoughts coming out of that?
Well, it validated what I've been feeling for a while, that the Cowboys are underrated. I mean, I did this poll of 8 executives this week, and they were 13th in the NFC. Now, if you look at their win total of 7.5, that was actually 13th in the NFC too. So there's not a lot separating 13 from 8. Okay, let's not pretend like, oh my gosh, are we down at 13? But to me, they were going to get way more benefit from Dak Prescott returning, by the way, in his last full season, second in MVP balloting. Then they were going to be hurt by Micah Parsons leading, who's not 100% healthy. I don't think is the backbone of the team. I think he's a really talented player, but I think there's real reasons why they were not as committed as Green Bay was in the types of offers they made to him. Yes, they offered 40 whatever million, but they didn't offer the real heft, the real guarantees, because I think they have reservations about him. And so to me, Dak is still a top 15 quarterback, right? He's 10 to 12 every year in my quarterback tiers. And so you're going to benefit way more from that coming back than you're going to be hurt from Parsons leading. So I thought it was a nice first game for Brian Schottenheimer, for Dak Prescott. They're on the road against Philly. They're 8.5-point dogs. They could have easily lost by 2 touchdowns. They were right there. And their best player, CeeDee Lamb, drops a couple balls or doesn't finish a couple plays. They'll take that. That guy's great. Yeah. They'll take those opportunities, and he'll make those 2 out of 3 times.
I was with you there on the Dallas impression. I was kind of expecting all the drama they've had, and then Prescott, who's he going to be? All those things. But when they had the delay, I was thinking, remember that Kansas City game, the game at Kansas City, whatever year it was, when it was a night game. It was 98. And the torrential rain coming down and the press box collapsed on Billy Williamson's computer.
Yeah, leaking, just cascading water in.
And I think Moon was the quarterback then, right? And it was after a delay like that, and that was a night game too. It kind of seemed like everybody would have rather gone home and gone to bed.
I know
it's a real mental
broken ribs in that game when Ricky missed a block. Sorry, Ricky. Great player, but it happens, and I know Warren.
But there's a real mental psychological disconnect when something like that happens, and maybe that's why there's drama at the start of games sometimes. We've seen guys, especially when they're warming up, they'll go across the line and somebody will get a little chippy because they're so pumped up. You could see DK Metcalf before the game trying to flex in somebody's face, and my theory is always shut up, play when you got to play, keep your mouth shut until then.
Offensive lineman mentality right there from Boling.
Exactly.
I don't have the energy for all that other stuff.
Yes, I will say that, like, generally when I want to watch 2 teams like that, and I'm expecting to see the Eagles play, I'm expecting them just to dominate the trenches. And what really stood out to me the most of anything in that game was this isn't last year's Eagles team. I think they've got Jihad Campbell looks like a very good rookie. I think he's going to be a good linebacker for them. I think their secondary has some promising players, but I think they're going to really miss Darius Slay more than maybe people realized. Adoree Jackson does not look like a good player, but the trenches, the defensive line, like obviously Jalen Carter wasn't there and will be. But you felt like the lack of Milton Williams. You felt the lack of Josh Sweat. Like it felt more vulnerable to me. And I don't see the depth of options that they're going to have to address that. And on the flip side, I thought that the Cowboys, who went really young on their offensive line, there's some promise there. I think that offensive line, there's some parts that were struggles, but for the most part, on the road against a Vic Fangio defense, world champs, like I thought they ran the ball pretty well. I thought they protected pretty well. And if I'm a Cowboys fan, I'm like, okay, this is a 10+ win team if we do things the right way. So I think the Eagles are a little bit less than what I thought. I think the Cowboys are a little bit more than what I thought. And the question I have for you guys is with the Jalen Carter thing, do you think that this is something that could lead to a suspension? And part of the reason I'm asking is the Eagles play the Chiefs next, and then they play the Rams in week 3. So Seahawks fans are going to be curious and suddenly hoping that people are lenient on Jalen Carter. But do you think this could be a suspension level event?
Mike, you got to take that.
I do. Yeah, I think that it could be. Now, I don't know if Dak's little pre-spit helps him in any way. Maybe it does, but I think it is. I think the fact that it occurred in the marquee game, and there's 25 to 30 cameras on it, the whole country's tuned in, and to have that be your first foot forward after they've spent the whole off season talking about sportsmanship and sending these videos to the teams, how can you not? That's as blatant as you can get. Is there a more disrespectful act that you can think of short of urinating on somebody, right? I mean, you spit on somebody. I guess spitting right in the face would be the absolute worst, but spitting on somebody is one of the worst signs of disrespect you can have and poor sportsmanship you can have. So I think they have to do it. And if they don't, I'll be surprised.
Yeah.
But more than a game?
I don't know about more than a game, but it wouldn't surprise. Like it wouldn't. 2 games wouldn't shock me.
2 games
more than that might surprise me, But 1 or 2 games, I mean, just a clear message that this is intolerable. I think they have to send that message, and the ejection does it. But I think going more than that would drive it home, and I think that's the type of thing they would do after it happened in this game. It's a great almost opportunity to make a point for the whole season, right?
Well, I think they're going to be the Eagles could potentially be very fortunate that they came out of this game with a victory if that happens. And then they play the Chiefs and the Rams. If they don't play the Rams with Jalen Carter, that's a very different game. They could easily have started the season 0-3, depending on how this plays out. But now they got the win. And so there's more we could talk about there, but this is not a show about the Eagles and the Cowboys. There was some news closer to home relative to this game. So this just burned up Twitter yesterday when it was reported that Christian McCaffrey, who started practice yesterday doing warmups where press was able to see, ended up being listed as limited and was not then made available for his media availability that he always does after practice on Thursday. We do have a report now, and the report came out that he had a calf injury. You guys all know last year, calf led to Achilles tendonitis, led to most of a missed season. And so we've got an update from Ian Rappaport on this, but I'm curious, when you first heard that news, Mike, what was your reaction?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because I think those types of chronic things don't go away. He's going to Europe and other places to get injections. I mean, that shows you the level of desperation here to try to get this thing. And he's a Ferrari. He's one of those guys, a different athlete. I think that, you remember Joey Galloway was one of those guys for the Seahawks too. Now he played a great long career and stayed in the lineup for the most part. But I think some of those guys who are Ferraris are so tightly wound. It's just like one thing gets out of whack and everything can go. And I feel like McCaffrey's one of those freak athletes. He really is. He is different when he's on. But what are the odds that at this stage of his career, after those injuries and a chronic type of a thing, that it's going to be anything better than something that has to be managed all the time, right? To me, that's just clear that it has to be managed probably the rest of his career. And so here we are.
He's like a decathlete, guys who are really versatile, can do many things, it puts strain on some of the soft tissue things and the connective tissues. Those guys are always having to get an hour-long massage and then an ice bath, and they're not the old Jimmy Taylor hand him off and break his nose and he'll bend it back and then play the next play and go for a touchdown. They're finely tuned. That was a good way to put it. And it's a shame because he's one of those difference makers, who is just enormously fun to watch. I mean, a shame from just an unbiased
non-Seahawks fan rooting interest standpoint.
And if you remember how fast he is, and that was his maternal grandfather was an Olympic sprinter, Dave Syme. I think he has some of that connective tissue that makes you really fast. It doesn't necessarily always translate to the game of football.
Well, and even the Seahawks fan piece of it is, look, there's some folks who are just like, hey man, any way that the Seahawks can get a win, we'll take it. They could roll out their cafeteria staff, and if they're wearing 49ers uniforms, we'll call it a win. But the truth of the matter is, you guys know this too, as impartial observers, the absolute peak of any competition is when you beat someone at their best. And that's why the NFC Championship against the 49ers back in 2013 was the best game maybe that Seahawks will ever have in the franchise's history, because those two teams were absolute titans and were stacked. And there was no, people got injured during that game, but they were all there. And so, you go and you beat a team with Christian McCaffrey at full strength. That actually says a lot more than beating a team that, has Brian Robinson, even though Brian Robinson's pretty good. So, I think the true ones are actually hoping that Christian McCaffrey is fine and plays in this game. But if I'm a 49ers fan, look, Mike, this. I, for the first time in my life, got introduced to Achilles tendonitis this year and was told, I'm used to, doctor telling you got a little bit to do this rehab, a few weeks and you'll be better. And they're like, okay, it'll be 6 months before you can walk on an incline again. I'm like, wait, what? It is a very stubborn, slow, and unpredictable part of the body. And if you don't respect it, it's all connected into the calf and you can rupture that Achilles like Dre Greenlaw did, just literally taking one step backwards to jog onto the football field in the Super Bowl. So it's a very real threat. And I would understand if I was a 49ers fan being a little bit concerned about this news.
And I felt like this offseason, there's been, you've heard of how great McCaffrey looks. And it's just like, okay, the whole time I'm like, I'll believe it when I see it,
Yeah.
And now we get into the point where maybe you have a tougher practice or you're ramping up for the season and right away he's on the report. So, maybe it's nothing, but it feels like something to me.
Yeah. It's also part of why I'm confused about the somewhat universal expectation that the 49ers are going to win the division. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. We'll get into your article here in a little bit, Mike. There was other news that came out yesterday for Seattle. Abe Lucas signs an extension, 3 years, $46 million, makes him about the 13th highest paid right tackle in the NFL. Seahawks take a little bit of a risk on his durability, and Abe takes a little bit of a gamble that, hey, I have some security, and so I'm going to take maybe less than I would get if I played this year out and was sustainable. So, Dave, Boling, what was your thoughts when you heard the news?
I was a little surprised. I kind of went, hey, good for him. It's a little bit of a leap of faith. I think I've talked to you from when he came into the league. I really like this guy, both as a run blocker, as a pass blocker, but also having a great right tackle philosophy and style of play. It seemed like he was made for this. He's so mature. He kind of has a hutch carriage about him. Do the job, kick somebody's ass, go back to the huddle, go to the line, kick ass again. And in some ways he makes it look easy when he's really rolling. In that freshman or his rookie year, It was against Nick Bosa, I think. He went out there and played a really, really solid game. I'm not going to say he owned him or anything like that, but that was the best pass rusher in the division, and he was handling it. And it seemed like it was fairly early in his rookie year, and I went in afterward and said, I couched it in those terms. You just had a good game against this guy. How do you feel about it? Well, they're paying me too, and he really wasn't like, oh yeah, man, I kicked his ass. He just was, yeah, that's my job. And I just loved his philosophy. And then as time went on, to see him not be able to come back, it was hard. It had to be difficult on him. And now, when guys post their workout videos, now it's a whole different thing. It's not a big surprise come season. You're seeing him squatting 500 pounds or whatever. And I thought in minicamp he looked a little slow. He was still working back through it. And I'm if it could be money well spent, but it's still a leap of faith.
Yeah, Mike, what were your thoughts?
Well, what was interesting to me about it is I thought we perceived a real disconnect in his treatment plan previously. And it felt like the sides really weren't necessarily on the same page. And I'm sure it's frustrating of what to do. And that happens when you have a tough injury. Sometimes you get your own opinion. The doctors of the team have theirs. And I felt like they weren't really synced up. And we saw that in the gap of how things were communicated. Don't you remember that, Brian?
Yeah. No, the team sounded disappointed that he was not going to be available for training camp.
Yeah.
Year, let alone
like they just weren't quite on the same page with what he had to do.
Yeah.
Is what it felt like to me. So this shows that getting on the same page thing. I think there's also new line coaches. I think they're trying to instill, you mentioned Hutch, Dave. I think they've tried to, Hutch works for the team and is a consultant for them on the offensive line stuff. And it feels to me like they've leaned into more of his mentality of player along the line and trying to have a line be more than just a collection of your whatever the best talents you have, but to have some real saltiness to them too, and some toughness and attitude. And I think that was hard for them to have last year when they're in the shotgun formation, 5-man protection, pass blocking the whole game. I think they're trying to turn the corner in not only how they play, but sort of what their demeanor is. And Abe Lucas, probably as much as anybody there, maybe Gray's able to, represents that. So the Seahawks have not been a team that have thrown around extensions early lightly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and in this case, I haven't talked to them. I don't have the inside, story on this deal, but just looking at it from where I thought they were, this seems like a pretty good endorsement, maybe a pretty good showing that they are on the same page now, and that he's a big part of what they want to be, and that they have some confidence that he's going to do it. And maybe when you do these deals sometimes with somebody, you think doing the deal will actually become self-fulfilling, and it'll help you get even more out of the guy. Does that make sense?
It does. And look, I did talk to some folks at the facility yesterday, close to this deal, and the organization's been pretty transparent about the 22. I asked John Schneider a couple weeks ago about the 2022 draft class. Why haven't there been any extensions? Are you done trying before after the preseason's over? He's like, no, and basically said like we're moving on to the next. Well, I think the additional bit of information here is the team's not dumb. They're looking at a collection of very young talent, and a salary cap, and how do we maximize how many of these guys that we can keep together? Because generally you don't want to let talent you believe in walk. Like that's just not the way the NFL works. And that offensive line, the good news is it looks like it could be one of the better offensive lines that the Seahawks have had for a long time. And the other good news is that it's the third youngest offensive line in the NFL, the starters. The downside is you got to have a lot of money to pay 2 tackles. You just got a rookie guard, but Anthony Bradford, if he turns out to be good, you're going to have to pay him after next year. Like you're going to have to pay if you want to have the Dallas Cowboys line from the, 2000s or whatever for a period of time. So I think they had other guys that they were looking at probably first to try to extend. And as John Schneider said, like, you move on when you don't get to agreement there. And so I think the benefit for the Seahawks is that Abe Lucas was willing to, I think, take what's going to end up being a pretty significant discount. Because here's this, guys. You guys both know Seahawks history as well as anybody. I think Abe Lucas is going to be the best right tackle that's ever played for the franchise. And let me tell you that on one hand, that sounds very bold. On the other hand, let me tell you the right tackles that come into mind for me for this franchise. You got Sean Locklear, Breno Giacomini, Chris Terry, House Ballard, Andy Heck. Like, tell me, I mean, you can put Jermaine Ifedi in there if you want. Like, there haven't been
Dave
a
will know
lot
the
of,
answer to this. Dave can rank them in order.
there haven't been a lot of all-timers at right tackle for this franchise.
It's been some guys who ultimately didn't work out there. You think of Justin Britt. There was an investment in him, and they ended up moving and finally finding a home at center. I think back to Ronnie Lee way back, was a massive man who played pretty well. And then Chris Terry kind of was a fill-in for a short time.
He was so good for a while.
There haven't been anybody who came in and locked down that spot. And I think Locklear, when I list the great line that the Hawks had, I often just kind of overlook Locklear, and Mike said, no, give him credit where it's due. And that's true, but he was not of that status at that time. I think Abe Lucas, I was saying this year, if he returns to health, it feels like he was a big free agent who came in, a talented young free agent, still pretty cheap, who has a big future ahead of him. And so I think that plays into maybe what the Seahawks are seeing.
Yeah, I think we'll talk a little bit about the difference in perception between people outside the organization, outside the area, about the Seahawks, and people a little closer in a bit. I think Abe Lucas is probably one of the biggest examples of an individual player where I was talking with Brett Coleman from Bootleg Football yesterday, and he's just like, man, that's a lot of money for a guy that's played 6 and 7 games the past couple of years. And I'm like, well, I think that's misleading. It's one injury. He recovered. The guy works. Anyway, I think this guy is going to be a Pro Bowl player. I think he's going to be a Pro Bowl player. I think he's got a shot to be an all-pro player, but I think he's going to be a Pro Bowl player. And Seahawks, frankly, just haven't had Pro Bowl right tackles. And you guys have both seen, and I talked to Matt Hasselbeck this week, the difference between that offense when they had Chris Terry, when they had Sean Locklear, and they didn't. It was night and day. Even though Walter Jones was all world on the left side, you still, like, your ability to do things on offense when you have 2 good tackles is just night and day. So I think this could end up being a really
well, and that was the vision they had when they brought in Cross and Lucas at the time. You go, oh man, they are locked in, the pillars of that line for the future. Maybe now they see that come to fruition.
Mike.
Yeah, I mean, Locklear probably started 60-some games at right tackle for them, so I give him some credit for doing that, and that's the thing that Abe Lucas has to do. But I'm with you on the potential of it, but you got to stay on the field,
Yep.
And that's a huge component of contributing, and not everybody can do it. And maybe it is just the one injury. They obviously feel good about it, so they probably know better than anyone. And like I said, they haven't thrown around the deals. I do like your idea too of, you want to stagger these things and have a plan for how you're going to sign people and when they're coming up and how you want it to fit. The Seahawks, though, are very low on the spending realm right now. They're a bottom 5 team in cash spending, so they certainly have the ability to do this without, mortgaging their future.
Yeah. There's another player that did not make big news outside the VMAC, but somehow he kept coming up yesterday. And I want to play some sound. My goal, guys, you know how this is. You have a thought and you want to ask some people for input. And my thought was, man, the 49ers they were a really bad run defense last year. And their solution for it is basically bringing all rookies, 2 rookie defensive tackles, a rookie edge player. And so I wanted to ask some of the guys, like, why is it that rookies seem to struggle a little bit as run defenders? And so the first person I asked was Leonard Williams. And I wasn't asking about a specific person. I was just asking in general. Here's what Leonard said when I asked, why do rookies struggle in the run defense?
I think it's pretty hard, but I think Byron just has the body, designed for it. He's somebody who like prides himself in like taking on double teams and stopping the run, which is different for a D lineman. I think most D linemen want to pass rush and get to the quarterback and stuff like that. And I know he wants to do that as well, but you could tell like when a double team's coming his way, he takes pride in like splitting the double team, helping the lineman stay off the linebacker and stuff like that. And, I think it's definitely hard as a rookie, just not knowing all the NFL schemes and stuff like that.
So that was Leonard. He brings up Byron. So then, I was like, all right, great. That's cool. And I was like, all right, I'm going to ask Ad and Dirty, defensive coordinator. Why is it that rookies seem to struggle a little bit more against the run? And here's what AD said.
It wasn't for Byron, was it?
Says it wasn't for Byron. Is his first thing. If you couldn't hear
that. I think you got to look at the college run game versus the NFL run game. I think college run game is a lot of gun. Most teams you come from is gun runs, and it's very much like the quarterback's involved in it. An NFL run game, it's multiple, and a lot of things can happen. A lot of movements, a lot of good players you play against that understand the keys you're looking at times. I think as you go through it, you have to feel the run game. That's like where Byron is. He's different, like I know it's not the splash plays that everyone wants to see all the time, but the work he does in the trenches, like when he's in there, it's hard to run the ball inside on him,
So that was AD. And so then I talked to Byron, and I will share that sound. I asked him in the locker room yesterday. I was like, all right, dude, so everyone's talking about you as a run defender. Is that something that you take pride in? And here's what Byron said.
Yes, that's correct. I'm a team player. Anything my team need me to do, to help them win, help my teammates make plays, I'm gonna do it. I'm a selfless player.
So I go on, I ask him where that came from and all that bit, but Byron Murphy, I still feel like is a little bit of a forgotten figure in the story of this season. First round pick last year. Let's start with you, Mike. What did you pick up from all those? The fact that Byron kept coming up when asking about this.
Yeah, they must have been anticipating that you were, doing something on him. Maybe
I didn't mention him.
Wrongly anticipating, but I think that they were maybe rallying to his defense a little bit. Maybe they misread where you were coming from on that. Because I think most of the questioning probably in those things, it's pretty easy to see where the reporter's going. They're like, hey, they're doing a story on the wide receivers, so they're asking about this, or, they must not have known what you were getting at, right?
Yeah, that's one possibility for sure. That wasn't the way it came across to me. It was actually like, here's the exception to that. Yeah, and then like I could go on. 80s does talk about why it is hard for rookies, but it's kind of like, yeah, but it wasn't hard for Byron, was it? And they're just, I think the thing that I'm getting out of it is, and I want to hear, Dave, your response on this, but I think that I've seen players gain respect in locker rooms from coaches and players for things that fans would never really see because it's not a stat. It doesn't show up on a box score anywhere. And Byron Murphy had a quiet rookie season by most accounts last year, but the people in that building think of him much more highly. And I think this is part of why, is they see how he plays the run as a grown man, even as a 21-year-old rookie last year. And it's pretty rare. Like, there aren't a lot of young defensive interior linemen that come into this league and play good run defense.
I got two things. On Murphy, I came out thinking he had a really good year, that because he was sound, he showed no real vulnerabilities. When I watch a football game, I have my glasses on the ball and the line. So I'm seeing what's happening with the center and guards and the interior defensive line. He was taking on the double teams. His job is to make a pile. And he was better than just that. He was also getting penetration regularly. I think when I always think the big jump is between the first and second year. No, they really, it changes them. Now they understand the game. And if they want it, they can really build on that. And you see it the next year. if I was looking at somebody who was going to really jump this year, I was thinking Byron Murphy. And the quotes that you had, the tape, I flash back, you could have probably gotten almost verbatim, word for word, from a young Brandon Mebane. And I always thought that Mebane was kind of the unsung, the least sung hero on that Legion of Boom defense because the job he did. And even in his later years with the Seahawks, there were some points in games where you saw him as a nose tackle sprinting, pursuing, and making a tackle on the sideline, maybe 4 or 5 yards deep, still putting in that effort. And it sounded to me like Murphy has the same attitude. I would expect a big year from him.
It's so much more than just talent acquisition. It's people acquisition too, and the types of people that you're getting in there. Obviously they have to be good, talented players, but the mentality of the players and team orientation is hard to come by. So I think that's a really good sign that everybody brought that up, and clearly Dave saw it through his binoculars or whatever, watching the games. And shoot, if you just go out and look him at practice, I mean, my gosh, he looks like he's great to stop the run. I wouldn't want
like a fire hydrant.
Those guys' legs are unbelievable.
Yeah,
I mean, they're different.
Stalliamuin.
Yes, those is amazing. So let's, in our last little bit here, I know Mike's gonna have to get out of here in a bit, but let's broaden the lens. Mike, you wrote an article where you pulled all anonymous execs about the rankings in the NFC.
Yeah.
And this was up on The Athletic. And if you don't follow Mike, you're crazy because he does amazing work. The Seahawks are 9th. They come in ranked 9th among your 8 voters. And the range was one person had them as high as 5th, and one person had them as low as 12th.
Yep.
So they're right now behind Minnesota, but ahead of Arizona. And
ahead of Arizona. Yeah. So some of this is in this middle class, you could line everybody up and they're all between 6 feet tall and 6'1.5". So the difference between being 8th and 12th is half of an inch of height. It's not like, oh my gosh, this guy's way taller. So there's some of that. But the things that struck me is clearly Philly, Green Bay, and Detroit were put in their own class of the top 3. Okay. And then you had sort of Tampa as this maybe the next team that's most reliable, but how high is their ceiling really, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have these kind of 3 teams in the Rams and the Commanders and the 49ers who have all pushed to championship games recently, right? And if Stafford's healthy all year, if Jaden Daniels keeps doing what he's doing, if the 49ers have better injury luck, right? There's sort of the if teams that have done it a little bit more recently, but they also have some vulnerabilities, right? That's kind of the next tier. And then you have Minnesota and Seattle before a big drop to the next group. And those are teams where people see some really good stuff, but they have some questions at the quarterback position where Minnesota is taking a 14-win team and handing it over to someone who's never really played in the NFL and J.J. McCarthy. And then Seattle is taking the quarterback they had, Sam Darnold, and is probably being slept on a little bit. I think we're more familiar with kind of the reasoning and everything behind, and yet at the same time, a lot of times locally you buy into that stuff too. So that's why I like the sort of look from afar. It reminds you that there are some uncertainties with this team, but I certainly like Minnesota and Seattle's chances to, one or both of them be ahead of some of those teams that are ahead of them in this. Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's volatility with the teams that are ahead of them, but you can see why the Rams have been in the Super Bowl, Washington's championship game, 49ers Super Bowl, right? There's some teams with a little bit more skins on the wall that could be falling out of there, but the execs in the league aren't willing to just put Seattle ahead of them right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And Dave, I mean, I look at this and, I have my own quibbles. I personally, I think Detroit has been really underrated. And I think people forget how good that team and how good that roster was. And then Aiden Hutchinson was gone. And I think they're going to be the best team in the NFC. And they were the best team in the NFC last year before they were just ravaged by injuries. we'll see how the coordinators, loss hurts them. But I love their roster and their head coach. But Dave, help me out.
I don't pay attention so much to the NFC. I'm not looking at those, and I can't really.
I'm going to ask you about.
I'm looking about the Seahawks.
I'm going to ask you about the Seahawks because what I want your help with is, I always talk about this team all the time, and I'm a fan of the team as well as a reporter, so I am biased, but this feels to me like a team that everybody is discounting outside, basically because they're like, we don't know the answer to question A, B, and C. Let's play a game for a second. If the answer to those questions are positive, how good can this team be?
The over-under is 8.5.
Yeah, it was 7.5.
And it was 7.5. And I looked at the team, looked at it. I'm thinking 10.5. I would go that far, and here's why. That defense, to me, has every chance of being a top 10 defense. I don't care what happened in that stretch last October. It was what the team was from November on. That defense was top 4 or 5 in the league statistically. And what the fulcrum that swung on was 4 or 5 games in a row. I kept writing, this team can't tackle. You can't win if you can't tackle. They brought in Ernest Jones, and it was an infusion to everybody. All of a sudden, Leonard Williams is playing all-pro level. Jones could be, was Pro Bowl level. And the several guys on the back end were. That was, I think, a high, certainly top 10, maybe even better. That defense gives you a floor, I think, of 8 wins. Now, what happens? You're going to be in the game. You're going to be close. What happens? The offense will define the ceiling. Mm-hmm. And I look at the schedule and I see 4 or 5 games against teams that could be pick 'em. Just the way things stand now, who knows what happens. If that offense can they win a couple of games on their own? Can they answer? Walker's healthy. I think he is a guy, if he can play 17 games, even 15, can have a huge season and reach what a lot of us have seen in flashes. I love Arroyo. I think he can be a guy, some of those tight ends. We're worried about Darnold. There's so many things that can happen now with a better offensive line, with the way they're attacking the game, where they're running. They're just suited to it. Sam Darnold's input for a quarterback, you think, what is the percentage influence of a quarterback is huge. I think it's going to be minimized. Robbie Oots blocking for Kenneth Warren III, those sorts of things. And I think back to last year, that game with the Rams, they lose at home, overtime. They couldn't gain 1 yard on 2 downs. They could have won that game. And they win that game. So many things are different. Mm-hmm. Now, again, okay, you win the 10th one. It doesn't really count. I don't care. That was the game. They identified the problem. They addressed the problem. They rectified the problem. I believe they certainly did it on the defense. I have reason to believe they've done it on the offense as well. I think Sam Darnold, can he manage? Oh yeah, he could manage a team. If he doesn't have to win the game, things are a lot better. And that's why I'm thinking 10 to 11 wins, and they can contend for the division title.
I would think so too. I think their floor is high for reasons Dave mentioned with the defense. And it was, remember in the last year, Pete Carroll, 29th in defensive EPA per play. They were 8th last year. So that's a huge type of turnaround that doesn't happen. Arizona was 32nd to 23rd, in trying to improve under Jonathan Gannon. So to go from 29 to 8, and they've been low 20s for a while. Awesome job. And they've got good players on that side of the ball, and they've got good people. I mean, Witherspoon is one of those people too. We talk about Byron Murphy, the right, kind of orientation, team orientation. Witherspoon's an amazing leader and a great player. So really like that. I think the question longer term will be offensively, what is the ceiling of that type of an offense?
Mhm.
Because I think it is going to mitigate the problems that they had of over-reliance and pass protection and just not being in the same page as your defensive coach and how you want to play, right? That's not how they want to play. They're going to play that way. And then we're going to ask, okay, where can it go from there? I think it's going to be better and good, and we're going to run the ball better. But I do wonder about the next step after that. What is the ceiling? And maybe that's some more talent on offense or whatever, but I think that'll be I think they will solve the problems, and then we'll have new problems that are good problems to ask about.
All right. I want to get Mike out of here. Dave, I don't know if you can stick around for a few more minutes.
Sure.
We keep talking, but Mike, last thing I want to ask you before you go.
Uh-huh.
If the Seahawks win this first game, do you think that does much for the perception? Are there certain ways that they'd have to win the game to change perception?
I think it would really, I think it would change some perceptions. Yes. Now people will maybe panic on the 49ers more, right? Because they're more of the marquee national team. You'll get a lot of, oh my gosh, 49ers is the sky falling. And so, then the Seahawks will be left to, wait a minute, didn't we win the game? I think it may be a little bit more of that, but I do think early out of the gates, it's a nice measuring stick, isn't it?
Yes.
Right now, the order is Rams, 49ers, Seahawks, Cardinals in that poll. And so I feel like it's really open, so I think it'd be I think it's a big game for the Seahawks.
Yeah.
I think it means should mean more to them. They split with these guys last year, but they brought in this coach to get the coach who with Baltimore really stymied the 49ers, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do they do against McVay and Shanahan? That's what we want to know.
Yeah.
And so you get this first one out of the gates, and the 49ers are not what they've been probably, and they have some new faces, and you feel like you're now in the second year of this program. Don't you want to, isn't it important to go get that win?
Yeah.
At home? You're home.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, to me, this is not a must win, but it's a disappointing loss to me.
Yeah, it sets the course for the season for sure. Mike Sando at Sando NFL. Make sure you follow him to read all his stuff at The Athletic, and hit him straight today. All right.
Thank you.
All right. That's Mike Sando. Dave.
Hey, before you go any further, now that Sando's gone,
now we can talk.
I would like to people who enjoy Mike's coverage and his work here and The Athletic, etc., probably don't understand what an absolute influence and expert he is on the National Football League. His coverage is the very top. A couple of weeks ago, if you get to be kind of a senior in this business, you can write whatever you want. I did a column about Sando and his Tiers project every year, and what that's come to mean to NFL general managers, even at the combine. GMs line up to talk to him rather than him having to go beg for access. It ran a couple of weeks ago in the Spokesman Review. I would say anybody who really doesn't understand Mike's position of authority should go back and read that story. It's I was shocked because Mike doesn't say anything. People are calling him all the time, and I tune my ears out. I don't listen, and he never says anything about it. But he has insight in the NFL that no one else has. It's pretty impressive.
It is very impressive, and one of the things I've gotten to learn about him in the last year that I didn't know about him, because I knew how good he was, I didn't know how competitive he was. Like he prods me all the time. He's like, you could absolutely crush this or do that. Why don't you go? I'm like, man, I'm just enjoying myself. But okay, it's good to know. I'll keep it in mind.
Well, that's the difference in newspaper business. That's always been a competitive thing. And at the News Tribune, we were always kind of viewed as a little brother in the neighborhood, and we loved with John Clayton, Larry LaRue, all those great beat guys over the years that we could try to kick the Times ass and as much as we could. So he fit into very, very well. But the other thing is how many young reporters he has helped along the way. That was a very surprising thing to, letting guys stay in his hotel room at the combine, and helping them with meeting people and setting them up in the business. He's really a reporter icon, I think.
Well, that is a great additional context, and I'm glad you shared that. I want to talk more about this game with you before we wrap. Before I do that, I just want people to know there's a really cool app that is sponsoring this show. The Sleeper app, if you haven't already used it, is a great place to hang out. One of the things I love about sports in general is just connecting with other people across all sorts of boundaries, geographical, gender, race, religion, whatever it is, to just come together and cheer and debate and safely debate about something. And one of the things that you can do in Sleeper is there's real-time chat. You can find other people, talk about plays. You can do your fantasy leagues there. You can do pick'em contests, all sorts of great stuff. And one of the things that people don't know is you can also get news updates there as well. So you it's like all in one for you as a sports fan. And if you use promo code HAWKS, you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. Sleeper's terms of use for details, currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. All right. So, Dave.
Yes.
This game, what's going to happen?
I want to see the Hawks rush for more than 120, 104. I want to see this newly emphasized rushing attack on the field against live ammunition produce. I mean, it should. I want to see if Kenneth Walker is back. I want to see that line fire out, own the line of scrimmage. I want to see that Seahawks jerseys past the line of scrimmage when that ball carrier gets it. I am fascinated in the use of two weapons. One that seems obvious, Arroyo. I think that tight end has got real big uptime. He is a weapon that creates difficult matchups. I want to see how he affects JSN. I want to see how he meshes with Darnold. I think Lockett, great career, DK, productive, all those things. I'm not really fretting there. Who produces? I think one of the byproducts of that is Smith and Jigma is going to be showcased more. And I really like what he has to offer. I want to see how they exploit that. Those are things that I think will really be interesting to me. If they can run the ball, they can stop the run. It's a new season. It's a new team. I think those are really the keystones of winning the game and a springboard to the rest of the season.
Well said. And I've got a bit of a bold perspective. I'll share this, and I mean this, but I'm going to have to add some caveats for it to make some sense and not sound crazy. When I was at training camp in 2011, and I was watching Brandon Browner and Richard Sherman, like 6'4", 6'3", 6'5" cornerbacks. I was like, I've never seen that before. How is this going to look? I watched them blanket receiver after receiver and just jam them at the line. I was like, this is interesting. And then you see Cam Chancellor, who was his second year at that point, Earl Thomas and Walter Thurman. And I was like, this looks like, my eyes are telling me this is a really good group. And like outside of Seattle, almost nobody could tell you about the 5th round pick or the CFL reject and Brown. And no one knew any of this stuff, right? Even Cam Chancellor had barely played as a rookie, and Lawyer Malloy was there, right? So, but I went into that season saying, it's not if, it's when this group becomes the best secondary in the NFL. And
well, and at that point, to interrupt there,
yeah, please.
Earl Thomas's speed and capacity to course like a hound for that ball once it's in the air allowed them to develop. And then you got the guys who are big and strong and can delay the release. Yes,
it all fits together.
And also, Browner, Sherman, maybe their 40s weren't quite what their anticipation and length. You think about how much time somebody who has that great radius, that arm reach, how much time in the 40 does, is that, how many tenths does that change? Being able to reach an extra foot than some short guy who runs a 4.3 or whatever. All those things, so that when you look at it, you go, well, maybe, by conventional NFL standards, maybe they've got some shortcomings. They fit into the system perfectly, and the kick slide and all those things they do, and get their hands on them. It all meshed perfectly.
Exactly. Really, really well said. And the point there is, I remember these moments. There's been a few, and not all of them are that glamorous. Like, I remember George Fant, the undrafted free agent, watching him in 1v1s versus Jermaine Ifedi, the first round pick, and being like, I think George Fant's better. And that eventually came to fruition, right? But I feel the way I felt about that LOB group, not that they're going to be the best in the league or whatever, but I feel the same way about this offensive line, Dave, that I felt about that group, where it's not an if, it's a when. I think this is a really well-constructed group. I don't know if they have anyone that's going to be a Hall of Famer. I don't know if any of them are going to be all pro, but I think that this is going to potentially end up being the most complete offensive line the Seahawks have ever rolled out. Like, even the teams that have, I get the skepticism, and it's totally fair, but even like
one of the best, surely.
2005 squad, I'm not saying that they're better than that, but like Chris Gray was a very solid player. I think that Anthony Bradford has a chance to be a better player than that. Doesn't mean he will be, but I think he can be. I think Jalen Sandell has a chance to be one of the better centers in the league. He's got to prove it, but I think he's got it in him. I think Gray Zabel as a rookie. So it's like, I look at this group all the way across, and I feel like there's potential for this to be a group that nobody's expecting to be really good, that ends up being really good and changes the course of the season.
That's certainly a possibility. I have some thoughts on why that may or may not. But the thing is that I think they had the really easily anticipated improvement. I love what I see out of Gray Zabel, and he is a businessman, and he's out there, and he just knows what his job is, and then he makes everybody better. Lucas coming back makes the rest of the line better. There are some places that they need to step up their game on the interior a little bit. But that remains to be seen. And again, the fewer weak links you have, the stronger the chain is. And I think that's really the case. But when you were talking about the back end of that LOB team, you look at the guys they have now. I think Witherspoon is really one of the greats. He's so young. I looked at his body and I thought he's not going to stand up. That's what I thought with Earl Thomas too, though. The way Witherspoon plays, what's he, 185 pounds? Yeah. But he's a 185-pound Panther. The guy, he will get after anybody out there and then jump in and throw blocks on an interception. And I think he has the potential to be all pro. I think Leonard Williams may be, before his career ends, maybe reached above Pro Bowl into that all pro region. Ernest Jones, I really think, could be a Pro Bowler this year. You got one guy at each level that's playing superior, and that lifts everybody. Everybody else, you look at Kobe Bryant, guys that maybe you're not even thinking about how good they are. Julian Love is surprisingly productive and good and talented. When those guys come together in the second year of this defense, they were good at the end. Last year was kind of the last 8 games were kind of season 1B for the McDonald defense. Now they're going into season 2 with the whole off season. And I think that's really going to be something that's fun to watch, to see how they have internalized and learned that defense. And I think they can really roll out the full capacity of it in terms of schemes.
Yeah, really, really well said, Dave. And last thing I'll just add there is the whole topic about Byron Murphy came up because I was asking about run defense for rookies, and the 49ers as an opponent right now, I don't think you could ask for a better first opponent from an offensive line perspective, other than the Nick Bosa thing. From a pass rush, that's different. But if you're going to run off the ball and create some holes, this should be a group that the Seahawks should be able to do that against, because as these guys are all saying, like, it is not common for young players to be good run defenders, and they've almost got exclusively young players in there. So to your point, I think my eyes will be right where your eyes are. That first play, when those lines collide, where does the line set? And I think that is going to be the determination of whether the Seahawks are the team that maybe I think you and I think they can be this year.
And it could all go to hell, because we've seen it, and it's
exactly that's
but
the
six of the last 7 years, the Seahawks have gone over. They are traditionally under evaluated early, and I think this is another one of those years they can do better.
Wise words from a wise man, Dave Boling. Thank you so much for your time here. Appreciate you coming here, and we'll see you very soon.
You betcha.
All right, that was Dave Boling. Great stuff from Dave. We got some super chats here we'll get to. Jonathan King says, Abe Lucas is a really good signing. A+. Love that from you. Matt McManus does the old 12 special. He gives away 12 Hawk Blogger memberships, man. Appreciate you, Matthew. Appreciate the generosity. I love this from this community. And all you got to do to get one of these free memberships to this channel, turn on gifting on your YouTube account. Google it if you don't know how to do it. And then like, subscribe, watch, comment on the show. And that's how Google decides who gets one of these free memberships. So go ahead and do that. Peter Go Hawks says, anyone know how bad the Bradford injury is? He's starting. So I'm going to be heading out to practice here in a couple of hours. I'm actually going to be going on with Grant Cohn on his show in about an hour, but in a few hours after that, I'm going to head to practice. So I'll take a look there. We'll get their final practice report. I'll say this, like, just my guess. I think Anthony Bradford will play, but that's just my guess. It's not a report. And we'll see. He was listed with a back. I think that often teams will take it easy on a Thursday there. We'll see what the Friday practice reports are. And the Derek Young, issue with a hamstring, that's a little bit more concerning to me, honestly. I think we'll see. Not that he is as big of a part of the offense, but as far as his availability, I'm a little more concerned about that. Reek Woolen having an illness at this point, unless it's some kind of weird illness, I would think he should be fine, hopefully by Sunday to play in the game. So that's kind of my rough read of what's going on there. But of all the injury issues, the Bradford one is one to keep an eye on. And if that were to keep him out, based on what we know, Olu would be the starter at center and Jalen Sandell would move to right guard. So that would be interesting if that were to happen. And I'll just say, I don't think that's their best configuration. I think they're better off with Anthony Bradford as a run blocker for sure. But it is a better situation than I think the Seahawks have had in past years, where you're bringing in a guy like Christian Haynes, let's say, who just hasn't proven yet that he's ready for this level. And I think you've seen more from both Jalen and Olu than you've seen from Christian. And they're still very young careers. We got a new member here in RHD22. So welcome to the crew, man. Appreciate having you, and great to see you. I'll say this. Excuse me. I posted a bunch of locker room stuff yesterday. Talked to Courtney Jackson, the potentially new punt returner for the Seahawks, as well as Chris Paul Jr., the new linebacker that they got from the Rams. Byron Murphy sound, as well as Tyrese Knight sound. So first interview with Tyrese Knight since coming back from injury, as far as I'm concerned. It's up there at patreon.com/hawkblogger. Check it out if you haven't already. I think there's some good stuff in there. The locker room will be open today. I'll probably do that again. We'll just see how my time works, because I also got the Ring of Honor dinner tonight. So looking forward to catching up with some of the biggest supporters we've got for the show, who help make all this possible, and looking forward to a nice meal. I want to wish everybody who's traveling in for the game safe travels, enjoyable weekend ahead of the game. And I want to read for you a little bit about, I'm not going to give you names, but I will tell you about the two people that got the tickets that I gave away, club level seats for the game this weekend. I'm looking at the wrong phone, so that won't work. It happens to be two sisters who actually grew up with around a lot of 49ers fans. And I'll read you what was written, because this is part of why they're going. Our parents grew up with Packers and 49ers shoved down their throats, but as kids, they wanted their own teams. So my mom went Dolphins and my dad went all in on Seahawks. They were brand new back then. We were born in Vegas, so no hometown team. So the Seahawks fandom was in our DNA from the start. As a kid, I got tired of being bored watching games with my dad, so I learned the game, became a diehard, and turned into our thing. During the Super Bowl, I broke my arm as a cheerleader, got a neon green cast, and the Seahawks actually posted our photo for Blue Friday. I moved to New York City. I still proudly rep the Hawks, bring West Coast energy to the East Coast, and introduced my dad to you and Cable Thanos. He doesn't even know the lore, but he's hooked. Now my sister's in Nashville. I'm in New York, and unlike our dad, we won't get season tickets. Getting to fly in for the home opener would be a dream, and we've been lifelong diehards. We're ready to be the loudest sisters in Lumen. Go Hawks. Well, congratulations. They, for all the people I talked to, and I talked to a number of people, those are the people I decided I wanted to give the tickets to, and I'm excited. And just to prove how careful I am about all of this, like, I'm going to meet these people and I'm not transferring the tickets until tomorrow, to make sure that no one's reselling these tickets. I want to make sure they're going to Seahawks fans, and that only Seahawks fans are going to be filling that stadium. And if you missed my updates over the last couple days, it should be less than half the number of 49ers fans that there were last year. There's still going to be a lot of 49ers fans. They're wearing red. They're going to show up. That's just always the case. There's a lot of San Francisco people up in Seattle. That's fine, but it will not be 53% of the group. And I want to thank all of you. The reason that those sisters are getting those tickets is because you got us to over 10,000 followers on Instagram. We are closing in on 25,000 subscribers here on YouTube. Once we get there, I'll probably do something special as well. I'll figure out what my next promotion will be. But, and I also want to thank one of my listeners for donating those tickets so that somebody can have a really cool experience at there. So if you haven't already given the show a like, click subscribe, please do. If you haven't told somebody about the show, please do. If you haven't given us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts lately, please take a second to do that. It is free and makes a huge difference for the show. If you're not going to give us a 5-star rating, let me know why before you do it. So, because anything less than 5 stars is really painful. It's really hard to recover from. So I'd appreciate a 5-star review there. And I'll just say this, I see the stuff going on in chats, and I'm like right on the edge of a banning of people. Like, I don't mind 49ers fans coming in here and having conversation, but if you're just going to be trolling, then you're really not adding any value. So we'll see. I'm going to end the show. If it continues, just be aware. I don't have a lot of patience, really any patience for people coming in here and making the chat a aggressive, unfriendly, unfun place. So we're here to have fun and talk Seahawks football. Appreciate folks that come in from all different teams to do that, as long as it's for fun. All right. Well, I just got my reason to ban. Awesome. So goodbye. That guy's gone. Everybody, have a great rest of your Friday. If you want to check out me going on with Grant Cohn, that'll happen here in about an hour. Until then, I'm Brian Hemhauser. This has been another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care.